attempting for the kill. Left and right by Marciano, a right cross, and Cottle sways again.
A right to the body and an uppercut to the head, and Herbert is down. We have a new era in boxing.
It was November 1986, and Mike Tyson, only 20, had become the youngest man ever to win the world heavyweight title. Aptly labelled the Incredible Hulk, Tyson has so amazed the public with his power and aggression, he is today the most celebrated heavyweight in the world since the heyday of Muhammad Ali. As a kid from Brooklyn, Tyson was on his way to a life of crime, mugging the citizens of New York. Boxing has put him straight. Moreover, he's become an expert in the history of his chosen sport. Unlike most champions, Tyson can trace his succession to the world title right back to boxing's earliest days. And that's why I invited him to a BBC film editing studio to look back with me at those who came before him. We started with Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion, who was admired by the white man for his skill, but reviled for being black.
For his time, he was a defensive genius. Because everybody back then, those times, would just make the fist and just take the punch, take time. But, you know, nowadays it would be so much difficult to do that because people throw 7, 8 punches at a time. Consistent punches, and one of them has to catch you if you're not elusive with your body. Since he wasn't elusive with his body or his feet, he just caught the punches up the air.
What he achieved, you see, Mike, was amazing because in those days a black boxer didn't get the opportunities that a black boxer would get today. And Johnson, in fact, was pushed around, shoved around, as so many great black fighters were in those days. And as you know, he had to chase Tommy Burns halfway around the world before he could catch up with him and get a shot at the title. In Sydney, Australia, 1908. Is that one of the fights that interests you?
Well, I'm very interested in the fight because the way he toyed with Mr. Burns so frequently, and it was just unbelievable because I watched Burns fight, and Burns was a tremendous fighter. Even though of his height differential of 5'7", he was just a tremendous fighter for his day. And I watched some guys toy with him, and it was just mind-boggling. I watched somebody just toy with another great fighter, and this guy must be magic.
He was a very controversial man all through his career, Johnson. He was a bit like a sort of Muhammad Ali of his day, I suppose you could say. And even at the end, when he lost the title against Big Jess Willard, there was that fantastic controversy about whether Johnson had actually faked the finish. He was knocked out of the 26th round. We've all seen the famous picture of him shielding his eyes, it said, from the sun with his right hand, which is supposed to prove that he was conscious and could have got up if he wanted to. What do you think about that?
Well, it's very difficult for me to believe that he threw the fight because of the kind of guy he was. And I watched the fight till it came out my ears, Johnson Willett, and I used to constantly see that he just got hit in the chin. And there was 26 hot, grueling rounds in the Havana, Cuba sun. 26 rounds, that's a lot of pressure on both guys. If he was going to throw the fight, he would have did it in 7, 6 rounds. 26 rounds is a long time to decide when I'm going to throw a fight.
Do you think you could you prepare yourself to go 26 rounds if you had to?
Almost definitely, absolutely. Going rounds is a state of mind. If you can go 4 rounds, you can go 6. If you can go 6, you can go 10. Go 10, 15, and so on. It's in a state of mind. It's very difficult to believe that if fighters now, back then, can go 45 rounds. Why can't we do it nowadays? It's only state of mind. It's only state of mind.
As far as his boxing ability is concerned, is he somebody that you would like to model yourself on?
Well, as far as the way he lives, you know, he was a champion, he fought as a champion, and you know, he lived like a champion. But as far as, you know, his style, no. I have no great interest in copying his style because if he was in modern day, he wouldn't make a penny.
Why do you say that? Simply because he was too clever?
Very clever, very smart, but very uninteresting. Very interesting. You wouldn't have to take a laxative or something to fall asleep watching him fight.
Nobody falls asleep when Tyson fights. Here he is dealing with a modern Jack Johnson.
Round number 1, scheduled 6, but hold on to your hats. Nobody thinks it's going to go that far. Well, there he goes. He's just going to pull his way in. Those rights to the body. Left jab, right to the heart.
Quickly want to point out, first fight for Michael Jack Johnson in 2 years.
I'm glad you pointed it out, because down he goes. The left hook just buried him, dug him in the ribs.
I think it was a
Michael
left and a right.
Johnson went goodbye. That left hook just caught him and sent him right to the canvas.
23-pound weight advantage,
my goodness.
and he put it all there.
The right to the head, and it's all over. Goodbye.
Let's move a little bit further ahead now, Mike, because I'd like to take you on to Jack Dempsey. We've got some footage of him here in his fight when he won the title from Jess Willard. Jess Willard, obviously, is the big man. Now, this was a very savage fight indeed. This is the first round.
I love watching this fight. Oh,
Willard down.
in the case we have here, Jack Dempsey is a very, very vicious man. And as you see, he fights like someone having eaten for 5 days.
Very small man, too.
But ferociously savage.
Well, he was a hobo in his early days. I mean, he had to fight to live. And it all comes out here, doesn't it? But you see, nobody, like, when you look at Dempsey, he looks very old-fashioned, doesn't he? And
well,
hands down, fights like somebody on the street.
No, you must understand, me and Cus spoke about this fight a lot of times, and I was telling Cus, wow, this is a great fight, he's great, Cus. And I was saying, but he said, but Mike, you must understand, this was a young Dempsey, he was wild, he was very nervous, he was very tentative, and he just wanted to get the fight with as quick as possible. Because he was this first time fighting for the title, he's 24 years old. And he's nervous. He doesn't know what's going through his mind. He just wants to win. And he's seen hurt the guy, and he's just, everything's explosive. He's tight. He's ready to go. And like, look at him now. It's just unbelievable what he's doing. He's been fighting for years. People don't know he's been fighting as a hobo for years, losing, winning, getting knocked out, having hundreds of fights. And his experience is so vast. You know, it's just so unbelievable. No one really knows how many hundreds of fights he had.
You can tell what an impression he must have made on people. To see him do that to somebody like Willard, who was quite well respected at that time. Willard had got rid of Johnson.
Look at this.
Look what he's doing.
This is unbelievable. This is what you call an onslaught, somewhat to a slaughter. And would you believe people had the nerve to call Willard a coward and yeller? Because back in these days, he got out of the seat. He didn't get knocked out on his back. But he had a broken eye socket, broken cheekbone, right. 3 broken ribs, and there was a rumor going around that Jack, he had hardened plaster on his arm, on his fist, when he went into the fight. I heard stories, I read books about what Jack Dempsey said about it. He just did whatever Jack Hearn said, though. So I'm like, Jack Dempsey, you know, I'm real biased on the situation. I love Jack Dempsey, but in those days, anything could happen, because there was no, like I was saying, there was no agency or nothing to protect the fighters. It was just you're on your own.
Mike, I can tell you a little follow-up story to that plaster of Paris thing that you mentioned about Dempsey's gloves. Because people have always suspected there was something wrong with that fight. I don't know why, but they do. Now, I did an interview with Jess Willard. He was well into his 80s. This would be in the 1960s. I went to his house in California, and we talked about this fight, and he said, I'll show you how I was beaten. And he went to a desk and got out a little cardboard box, and there lying in the box, wrapped in wadding, was an iron bolt with a big head on it. And he said that Dempsey had clutched this in his glove fist with the bolt sticking out at the end, and he'd hit him sideways with it so that the bolt hit him. And he said the bolt was found on the floor of the ring at the end of the fight, and he kept it, he said, for nearly 50 years, and he was still angry about it, and he was 80-odd years old. So how about that?
I can't believe it. It's very difficult for me to believe also. I refuse to believe something like that.
Dempsey, the Manasseh mauler, didn't need artificial aids. His fists were good enough. They were good enough in 1921 to destroy the idol of France, Georges Carpentier. And 2 years later, Luis Firpo of Argentina. Although Firpo did knock Dempsey clean out of the ring in the first round. But there was one man Dempsey couldn't beat, and that was the fighting Marine Gene Tunney, a superb boxer. He's the one wearing the white trunks. They met twice in the 1920s, and Tunney outpointed Dempsey on both occasions.
And by just looking at Gene Tunney, a masterful boxer, also way ahead of his time, who didn't get the credit that he deserved because he was a scholar and an eloquent gentleman.
Now here Dempsey is trying to get the title back from Tunney, and this of course is the fight which we shall see in a moment, the incident, the famous long count, where he puts Tunney down.
Just look at Tunney, a masterful boxer.
Different altogether in this fight to what we saw against Willard.
A very mature fighter.
Yes, looks much more controlled.
Very controlled.
Now this, of course, is the famous incident where Dempsey was slow to go back to a neutral corner. And although Tunney was down, Dave Barry, the referee, didn't pick the count up until he'd made Dempsey go back to the corner. So Tunney had, we reckon, we've counted the
14
thing.
seconds.
Yes, I think that's right. He had 14 seconds altogether. That's
I don't like this fight. No, I don't like this fight because I think it was something funny going on, you know, with Mr. Barry. Because in the 7th round, I think it was, Dempsey got dropped with a right hand and behind the ear, and Mr. Barry count right away. He went right to the count. Right as soon as he went down, Mr. Tunney didn't go to the neutral corner. He started counting right away. And it's very hard for me to believe. And Dempsey was a very loved fighter. Even till this day, everybody still loves Jack Dempsey. But his manager, Jack Kearns, made a lot of enemies for him.
You see, even here, if you look at this, Tunney's got his arm over the rope, as though he knows exactly where he is and what he's doing. And he gets up at 9. So, if he'd had to get up 5 seconds earlier, which he would have done if there hadn't been the delay, don't you think he probably could have beaten the count? He never looks unconscious to me. He always looks as though he's in command.
I'll tell you something. He's a very cool and collected fighter, Gene Tunney. But I think if he would have got up, and I don't think there's no man in the world would have survived the attack like Dempsey was over. I don't think he would have survived.
So what you're saying, Mike, is that you regard Jack Dempsey as one of the really great old champions.
Oh, man, I'm crazy about Jack Dempsey. It's because of his ferocious intensity. You know, there's no one like him. No one like him.
Do you see anything in your own fighting that compares with Dempsey?
I would be a privilege, you know, like everyone compared me to him, but I know deep inside that there's no one like Jack Dempsey.
5 of 8 have fallen in the first. Is it 6 of 9 as Tyson comes out with a strong right hand barrage again?
This is as bad as I've ever seen Donnie Long look, but give Tyson credit. That's it. Wow.
The left hand puts him down. He collects.
Retired, Mike. As you well know, there was a period when they had what I call caretaker champions. There were fellows like Schmeling and Sharkey and Carnera, and even Max Baer, who were not, I think, some of the really great champions.
Good fight. They were all good fighters.
But, you know, when you think of the really top champions, the one coming up next is one of the all-time greats, Joe Louis. Now, here's Louis in Chicago in 37 with James J. Braddock.
What round is this?
This is the final round, the 8th round, in which Louis wins the title from Braddock.
And Louis showed a great deal of maturity here. He's always a game fighter because, as you know, earlier in the first round, he came back from a first-round knockdown from James Braddock, who was a very deadly puncher.
The Cinderella man, because he'd won the title against everybody's expectations when he was getting on a bit, although he wasn't all that old when he won the title. He was about 29.
Yeah, really, he was 29. And back then, guys, they were hungry fighters. They were very hungry fighters, and everybody wanted to win. And I hear the story that he was on relief, you know, when he came back to win the title. And that's how I think he got the distinguished name of the Cinderella man.
What I always like about Louis when I look at old films of him is that he still looks to me like a modern fighter. You know, he's one of those good old champions who still look modern. You could box like this today and nobody would think it's strange.
True. And it's just unbelievable punching accuracy.
Right.
Unbelievable. His accuracy was second to none.
Louis was a very exciting young champion. There we are, all over. And Joe Louis is the new champion. You see, I always think